I'm Sector Surfer Joe. Actually, I'm LZ, and we're going to be talking about a couple of stock screens tonight. And I will be wandering around, so you'll see me fade into and out of the picture. Okay, so last month we talked about a screen. My guess is, just from the size of the crowd here, most people, maybe 2/3 of the people here, didn't see last month's screen. So I'm going to spend a little time going over it. The original intent of the screen was to find good retail stocks out of the retail industries, okay? And at the end of last month, I said, well, you know what? I think this is a pretty good screen in general, so I'm going to go off and I'm going to apply it to all the S&P sectors and see how well it does. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. But first, we'll do a review of the screen, so everybody kind of is on the same page. The screen is aimed at large cap retail. It's not at small cap retail. There are basically three factors in the screen, only three. And they are EPS growth rate over the trailing 12 months, sales growth rate over the trailing 12 months, and PEG ratio. PEG ratio is PE to growth, EPS growth in particular. And that is typically viewed as a growth at a reasonable price type metric. The other two are just flat out growth metrics, okay? So two are growth, one is semi-value, or growth at a reasonable price. What we did is we took the top 25 retail stocks from the screen I'm about to show you and sorted them. The sort on those were market cap. And we compared it to three benchmarks, S&P 500, of course, an equal weight portfolio of all the retail stocks, okay, rebalanced annually. So this sounds like the stuff John was just talking about. And the reason that's important is if you compare it to the S&P 500, you go, just the S&P 500, you go, oh boy, this is great. If you compare it to the entire industry, rebalanced, the screen should still do better, obviously, but you'll find out that the S&P 500 is an underperformer, okay, because of the rebalancing effect. And then a little bit different approach than what John did. To gather some statistics to get a feel of where my screen is in terms of the bell curve, okay, I simulated 30 random portfolios, okay, and the way those random portfolios are effectively picked is start at year one, pick 25 stocks out of the retail industry, hold them for a year, randomly pick 25 stocks out of the retail industry, do that for 14 years, generate one EC curve, then do that 30 times, and from there you should be able to start talking about some general statistics about the overall, what happens overall with this screen. So I didn't do the 2,000 that John did because the 30 stocks or the 30 screens, random screens, are implemented with my finger here. It just goes click, okay, I got one and I copy the data, click. It's not code. I'm using, for those of you who care, I use Portfolio 1, 2, 3 to do all the back testing. So that's where this comes out of. Let's see. Okay, and then I summarized all this work. Here's the screen. The first factor is just making sure you got $1 million of trading per day. That's just a liquidity. I don't want anything that I can't trade. And then I say, give me all the distributors, all the food and staples retailing stocks, the internet and catalog retailing stocks, the multi-line retailers, and the specialty retailers. So I just say, give me those industries, okay? Notice these are industries, not sectors. All right, again, I was specifically trying to go after retail with this rate. And then what I found out is the little green dot over here, by the way, that tells you whether the factor's on and off. All the factors factors are on. The numbers over here tell you, as of August 20th, 1999, how many stocks passed the screen. That's how you can read this, if you will. The next three factors, there's your sales growth rate, your PEG ratio, and your earnings growth rate. Okay, so that's the whole screen. And a market cap sort. So again, I was looking for, it's a very simple screen, sales growth in the top of the top half of the industry, earnings per share growth rate, top half of the industry, and PEG rate in the lower half of the industry. Okay, sort that by market cap and take the top 25. Okay, so, sorry, looks like it gets cut off a little here. This is basically all the retail stocks. So this is effectively not applying any screen other than your retail stock. Okay. And here's the S&P 500, the blue line, and the red line is what happens when you rebalance that annually. So again, very similar to what John just showed us. And the S&P over these times made 1.6%, and this makes 12.3%. Okay. So again, this is another example of, you know, a brain dead screen where you go, give me everything, and just snookers the S&P 500. All right. Here's what happens. You take the top 25 on the screen I showed you. Again, S&P 500, blue, screen in red. Doesn't do quite as good. It only makes 11.4%. Okay. So this is all what we saw last month. It's a pretty good screen. And here is the magic table. Green is good on this table, red is bad. This is the chosen screen. It's yearly EPS, yearly rotation, EPS sales growth rate, etc., 11.4. You can see the S&P 500 did 1.6. Here are the statistics. You can't read them probably out there, but this is already posted at Dropbox. You can see it. It's also from last month. And what it turns out to be is, at least by pattern, compound annual growth rate, this is on the 87th percentile of that bell curve. So it's a pretty good, you know, gives an indication. It's a pretty good screen. 14% max drawdown, and that's good because that says you're on the other side of the bell curve. The sharp is 92nd percentile. Okay, so it's a little better a sharp, and that's because the standard deviation is in the 5th percentile. Okay, so this is a different way of looking at the statistics than the cumulative distribution function John was showing a minute ago. This is just saying, where am I on that bell curve? All right, so that's everything we saw last month. All right, so what did I do now? So I ran as sort of a baseline. I ran the entire sector, okay, that passed the liquidity and market cap constraints, because I was typically looking for higher top half market cap, rebalanced annually as a benchmark, very similar to some of the rotations John did. Again, I did a randomly picked 25 stock screen, so I had enough data to draw the bell curve, if you will. I then applied the screen factors to each sector. And how I did that is I first started with a sort. Didn't screen anything other than liquidity. I just sorted all the remaining stocks by first the PEG rate, and I sorted it by the EPS trailing 12-month growth rate, then the sales growth rate trailing 12-month, and also market cap. Okay, so the whole screen is to make sure it's liquid, and then a sort, and you're done. There is no screen other than the sort, if you will. I then took whatever came out with the best compound annual growth rate from that. I said that's the best sort, and then I then applied Well, the screening factors. I did the single factor screens, peg rate, EPS growth rate, and sales growth rate again. And then I turned all three of them on at once. This is very similar to what we did last month for retail, okay? Where we went through and saw the effects of each one. I then chose the best screen. Many times, the sort was all that mattered. It didn't matter what the screen was, okay? All you had to do was sort them, and you're done. Oh, by the way, I like these sort of screens in the sense of the fewer factors I have to consider, the better, because that is an indication that you're probably doing less curve fitting, okay? I then compare the best screen by this method to the S&P 500 and the randomly selected distribution.
Did you end up doing, you didn't treat each sector the same, right?
Pardon?
You had a slightly different optimum method for each of the 10 sectors?
That's right. So essentially I'm finding the best sort and the best screen of these three factors for each sector, okay? All right, so here's just the screen, just so you get to see it. It looks complicated, but it's not. The first one is the liquidity factor again, $1 million a day. Everything else here is turning on, I turn on one sector at a time. So for example, here, that little green dot over there says I'm selecting the healthcare sector. So this is how I turned on healthcare for the screen. And then I was looking for market cap in the top 50% of the industry. Again, I was looking for large caps as opposed to small caps.